Welcome, SciCommers, to our February mentor chat. And effective science communication means meeting your audience where they're at, and sometimes our audiences are outside of our comfort zones. And we are pleased to have Aspen Institute Science and Society Program Civic Science Fellow, Dr. Jylana Sheats, join us for our mentor chat series for a conversation on embracing discomfort and the self-reflection needed to truly expand your comfort zone to engage audiences. Jylana, the floor is yours now.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the introduction, Tyler. And I'm just excited to be here for this SciCommers event, talking about a topic that has just really been a passion of mine for several years. And for me, I get to share with you all just like, lessons learned over the years. But to give you a little bit about my background, I'm an applied behavior scientist with training in public health and behavioral medicine. And I currently act as a science advisor and research scientist working across sectors, helping organizations address like tactical and strategic issues and providing them with guidance on the design and deployment of solutions wherever there is a behavior, okay? And so I use a range of methods from quantitative, qualitative, mixed methods to really try to bring out psychosocial and behavioral insights. And I do have a penchant for working with underserved, underrepresented, and historically marginalized populations. And this is something that I truly enjoy. Because one thing that I've learned along the way is that lived experience matters, and you can be the best scientist in the world, but your experience is not, may not be the experience of those in the communities in which you work. Okay. As Tyler mentioned, I am a civic science fellow at the Aspen Institute Science and Society program, and I'm also a clinical associate professor at Tulane University in the School of Public Health and Tropical Medicine. And then I also am the associate director, just moved into this role as the associate director of the Aspen Institute Science and Society program. So I have a lot of hats, but I do these things because I like working in different spaces and at different levels, because as a behavior scientist, if you want to change a behavior, improve a health outcome, whatever it may be, then you have to operate at multiple levels. And so for me, working across these different sectors, I have this lens in which, I can at least have a sense of what the other sector might think or do or whatever, but I feel that I also have a seat at the table and I can be a voice for those in the community that may not be able to be there. And I always stay connected with the communities in which I am, for example, designing solutions for, because their voice is really, it's really what matters. And so I'll have a brief PowerPoint, but you can ask questions in the chat and along the way. I'm pretty, flexible in terms of, how we can engage with each other. And I really want to hear from your experiences around engagement. And if there's ways that, issues that you have, maybe this is a forum where we can troubleshoot together to figure out like what works, maybe what doesn't work, or, anything like that. If anything, I kind of would like to see this as being more of a, like a workshop, okay? But, so let me share my screen. All right. So as Tyler mentioned, the talk is engaging communities and expanding our comfort zones. And so lately I've been using this image here. And it's Homer Simpson just kind of, going back into the bushes. Maybe there was something that was he's hiding from, or that, there was something that made Homer uncomfortable. I don't know what it is, but I have this feeling often. I am naturally shy. I don't care for public speaking, but I feel that I don't have the time to be shy. And I have to share the things that I'm learning in the community. So it's like, this may be how I feel on the inside, but in order to really make an impact, it's unacceptable. And I can't speak for, all the different cultures and race, ethnicities, and so forth. Like, I have to be able to engage with people. Okay. And what I find is that sometimes people are comfortable with this. And sometimes we say hard to reach. But my thinking is, are they really hard to reach, or are you not doing the due diligence to get to know, the group of people that you want to engage with, or the community that you want to engage with? So that terminology, although I use it, sometimes it just kind of rubs me the wrong way. Okay. So we can talk about that throughout the conversation today as well. So there are different ways to engage, from more superficial outreach, where it's just maybe like even just like one-way engagement, one-way communication, to a more deeper and shared leadership. And so what I found is that, you may start at the outreach point, but I think as you get more and more comfortable with the community you're working with, getting to know them and seeing the value, then you can kind of go across this continuum, and maybe not even in this order, but there's some level of engagement that goes beyond just this, initial outreach. And so with outreach, that's just some community involvement. Communication flows from one to the other to inform, provides the community with information. So for me, I'm thinking about like some kind of event, or you just, literally just disseminating information. It might be, and again, I'm in public health, so like I work with this initiative called Black Care, where we have groups across the country promoting chronic kidney disease awareness around, specifically for like Black Americans. And so many of them are doing billboards. And so one of the billboards, I lead this program as like a volunteer. And one of the groups sent me a picture of their billboard. And it just had like a stat about chronic kidney disease in Black Americans. And then I was like, okay, maybe put a QR code on there, maybe put a phone number. Someone told me once that, basically if you just give people information and that's it, you may think it's empowering, but it's actually disempowering, because you're like telling these people this thing, but then there's no way that they can actually act on it. Nothing they can do. They're like, oh my gosh, I might be at risk of this, that, or the other, but there's nothing, no call to action. And so when we think about outreach, I think we have to kind of be strategic in how we design our messages, like the language and the channel, to make sure that it can facilitate some kind of action if that's what's desired. Then there's consulting, where there's more community involvement. Communication flows to the community and then back. It can involve, answer seeking, gets information or feedback from the community. Okay, so this could even, I'm working with a health plan now, and we host these listening sessions on different topics of interest to the health plan. So it's like, okay, what do you think about value-added benefits? What do you think about patient provider communication? What do you think about the onboarding process? So, this is a way to actually consult them, on issues that really help the organization meet their bottom line. Okay. And it's also a way to develop connections between, for this particular project I'm on, between the health plan and the members. And so one of the things that we do is at the end of every listening session, then, we ask, like, do you want to be a part of this group? Do you want to be invited to more listening sessions? Because there's something that we hold quarterly. And so it's building this network of members that maybe at some point might even become, ambassadors for the health plan, or that they could highlight somehow on social media. So it becomes a bit deeper when we get, and that could be the involved stage, okay? So here again, communication is flowing both ways. It's more participatory, and involves more participation with community issues. And there's different entities that kind of work with one another. At some point, you may get to the collaboration stage, where the communication is more bidirectional. So they're sending you information, they're sending you information, you're getting information, sharing resources, connecting them with others, really forming a partnership with the community on each aspect of the project, from the planning phase to the solution to the evaluation. Like they're really partners in whatever you're doing. And then eventually you get to this point of shared leadership. This is here there's this even stronger bidirectional relationship where the community may have a role in decision making, and entities have formed these strong partnership structures. And so when you get to the outcomes, just thinking about outreach, that first pillar, it's just really just establishing communication channels where shared leadership, broader health outcomes affect the broader community. There's trust that's built. And one of the things that, I continue to say when I give talks about this is like, you can as an outsider, you can really move as fast as the trust that the community has of you and your team per se. Okay, so you're really moving at the speed of trust, moving at the speed of the relationships that you've built. And sometimes when working with communities, like, you may have to change the way in which you do things. It really needs to resonate with what works in their world, or maybe there's some kind of you co-create a process, or there's some shared language or whatever it may be, but you have to go beyond what your status quo is, and really, as Tyler said in her introduction, meet the community where they are. And so this could be a little, unnerving, and may make you uncomfortable, make you want to go back in the bushes like Homer. And so that's why it's important to think about your comfort, stretch, and panic zones. And so everyone's threshold for these different zones is different. And it could depend on certain situations. Like I shared, like I'm naturally an introvert and shy, but when I'm around my family and friends, I am the life of the party. Even with my colleagues, I'm extroverted because I'm comfortable with them. But oftentimes we'll work with communities that, we don't know a lot about, or that, we may not be as comfortable with, but at the same time, think about how comfortable are they with you? We often try to put things on the community, but like, okay, let's think about ourselves. And so that's what we're going to be doing in the next few slides that I kind of go through. And so as change makers, whether you're a current or a future change maker, we have to get outside of our comfort zones. And the comfort zone here in the center is a zone in which you feel comfortable as an individual. There's no fear, there's no discomfort. The person feels at home, they feel safe, all things are familiar. And so there's no like real challenges or a learning process to kind of start. There's little reflection in this because it's kind of like a safe zone, and anything you do might be unchallenged, okay? Things stay the same. Now, the panic zone, this is far away from the zone in which we feel comfortable, and it can become overwhelming. And in this zone, we experience stress, fear, challenge. It's a challenge in a way where learning is actually impossible. or connecting with the community is impossible because you are so uncomfortable that it makes others uncomfortable, or it makes others not trust you or want to be around you, just not clear on the intentions, or you were so uncomfortable that you've designed this whole program and it doesn't resonate with anyone because you didn't connect to the people that were impacted. Okay, so there are a number of implications of operating in this panic zone. And most of your fear might, or your energy rather, might focus on controlling your fear or panic, but a lot of times these things just kind of come through. And so when you're in that zone too long, it makes it such that you can't explore boundaries and instead prefer to stay within your comfort zone. And I tend to always put myself in this stretch and learning zone. I like to make myself uncomfortable, because when I'm uncomfortable, there is growth. I'm like, why do I torture myself? Why am I doing this? And I'm just like, it's going to help me in the long run. I just have to. And so the stretch zone is a zone in between those previous zones, as you see in the picture. And, sometimes these situations may feel awkward or unfamiliar, but learning can occur. It's where you can enhance your possibilities, where you can work towards your personal development, but really work towards, getting to know those communities in which you want to engage with, where you can explore, your boundaries, where you can do some self-reflection. I feel like oftentimes we don't self-reflect enough. You can always retreat back into the comfort zone, but it's very important to get back in that stretch and learning zone. I was part of this anti-racism academy, and some of the participants in there were just saying how learning about anti-racism was just stressful, and they felt guilty and that it was too much, and they've been in different academies like that before around diversity and equity, and that they were just so thankful that they could retreat and not think about it when they got home or whatever. And then it was like they would go back into their bubble. That's what they told me. They would go back into their bubble, and they were saying, unfortunately, they would forget about all the issues and different things like that. And so for me, I was like, well, I don't have that luxury. Anywhere I walk, my skin color, I have all these degrees. I grew up privileged. And when people see me, they see my skin color and make all kinds of assumptions. And so what I told my colleagues was, I encourage you not to go back into that bubble, because there are, a lot of people that don't have that luxury and are still fighting for just basic things. And so it's really important to get outside of your comfort zone, get to know those that you're trying to engage with, because I don't even know why I should have to, really explain. It seems like common sense, but a lot of times it's not common. It's not common sense. And I think that bias, whether it's implicit or explicit, which I'll explain in a minute, this plays a huge role in sometimes why we think the way that we do, or why we do or we don't engage. And so implicit bias, which is also called unconscious bias, it refers to attitudes and beliefs that occur outside of our conscious awareness and control. They are so deep in our brain and our mind that we literally do not know that they exist. But they affect our understanding and how we synthesize information and take information in, and can lead to actions and decisions in an unconscious manner. Whereas explicit bias, these are biases that you're aware of on a conscious level. So if someone is wondering about how you feel about something, you can just easily roll off your tongue. Yeah, this is how I'm feeling. But much of the time, these biases and their expression arise as the direct result of some kind of perceived threat. Okay, and maybe it's a threat of, being outside of your comfort zone. okay, or assumptions and stereotypes that, you grew up learning. Oftentimes we learn a lot from in our early years, just the way we grow up in our families and so forth, where things become the norm, but they're like shouldn't be acceptable in like society. And so when people feel threatened, they're more likely to draw upon group boundaries to distinguish themselves from others. And so one of the other things that I think is important just to recognize that bias is everywhere. It's in clinical settings, hospitals, medical nursing, pharmacy students, educational settings, social settings, employment, work settings. It's in algorithms, in our AI. I mean, it is literally, it's literally everywhere. One of the things I like to kind of show in some of my classes is Christian Cooper is an example of this. So he's a Harvard graduate, avid bird watcher, president of the Audubon Society, biomedical editor, LGBTQ pioneer, Marvel Comics author, the Black man, all these great things. But for Amy Cooper, there was some level of like bias, maybe some racism. I don't know what it is. But, one day in the park, Amy Cooper, all she saw was a Black man, and whatever biases she had previously that made it into more than just a Black man bird watching into the park. Okay, and the police were called. I mean, you all hear about this stuff all the time. But this is what happens, in our biases, and people are literally getting killed over things like this. And so one thing we have to recognize is that, we are intersectional. We are intersectional beings. I am a Black woman. I am Southern. I'm a scientist. I'm from the US, like whatever it may be. And so your sense of self, it comes from being a member of certain groups, your social identities, and these shape how you think and feel about many topics. And this identity wheel, can help you think about, your own and other social identities, maybe even help you think about areas where you might have a bit more power than others. And this inner circle represents more demographic components of who we are, also helping, think about like power in this regard too with the inner circle. And then the outer circle represents identities that can modulate our experiences in the world. And so say I come into a room or I'm invited to, here's an example. Say I'm invited into a study, okay, a research study. And then like say that, typically in studies, it's like white males. So say it's like a white male, how that white male interprets the study versus how I interpret it, even as a researcher myself, is going to be a little bit different. I can't even lie. Like I'm questioning trust. I'm questioning the intentions, all these things that, we read about in terms of like looking at racial, ethnic, minority groups and, engagement in research. There are very real barriers to entry that deal with, historic and current issues. Now, I don't remember all the details, but I even remember, like, I think there were some researchers that were wanting to test, I think it was it may have been for the COVID vaccine. I think they maybe wanted to test it and they were saying, let's test it on, what was it, on Black prostitutes in, I think it may have been like Africa or something like that. So a lot of people always like to refer to, Tuskegee. There's things like within every decade, there's some things where people are not treated in the right way when it comes to research. But also, as we think about this identity wheel, it's thinking about the populations that you're trying to reach and the makeup of your team. And if your team reflects, the people in the community that you're trying to connect with, because that is that's super important. And in one of my classes a couple of years ago, one of my students, they had a group project, and one of my students was saying how, like, she's like, I see why in this class, in this group project, I see why it's important to have diverse research teams. She said, because she says, I'm white, but my son is Black. And in our team, we're trying to, I think they were trying to address like asthma, some type of asthma issue in Oakland or something like that. And they were like, she was like, my team members are they're saying, well, what do Black people call asthma? What is the slang word for asthma? And so, I mean, yeah, like she felt very uncomfortable and just came to me and was like, this is why we need, people in the community as part of like a community advisory board, or they need to be part of the research team, really both. Or even, because those types of assumptions, like what do Black people call asthma? Yeah, I just thought that was very interesting. So thinking about not only your identity and reflecting on the power that you may or may not have, and privilege as well, but thinking about the identity of those that you're trying to impact or connect with, and your team, and how that, and what that makeup is. Because context matters. It is so important. And whether we want to reach someone at the individual level, the interpersonal level, institutional level, community, or policy or / societal level, then we need to know who our stakeholders are at each of those levels, but then also how to engage with them. And so that might mean, one, like the first thing I do is to look at the bigger issues, okay, the nature of the problem. I go to like the literature, the peer-reviewed literature, any kind of local data I can find on a population or a community. I feel like that's like what you can do at the bare minimum. Then also working with local organizations, getting to know them and realizing that they may not trust you and that it may take time to earn that trust. But working with them, like I remember I was doing a study in New Orleans, and I wanted to recruit midlife to older Black adults from churches. Just because I'm Black doesn't mean they're going to let me in there. And so I was going to church services, having meetings with pastors, getting to know the community, because I was new in the area. And, it took like a year to cultivate relationships. And I had to do the same thing. And I actually learned how to do this during my postdoc at Stanford in the School of Medicine. I was doing, community-based work, citizen science research. And that's what really taught me to like, oh, okay, I need to go talk to people. I need to go into the community. I need to build these relationships. And it might be that I might have to like do something, give a talk on something they're interested in. I might have to, go to this event or that event, or do all these things to connect with the community. And so part of it is being open to that. And again, going past your comfort zone. And I'm about to wrap up, but just to show you the value of working with the community, I was doing this research study. It was a text message study. So, the participants, which were Black to midlife adults as well. I was recruiting for a intervention where I was trying to change their eating behaviors. That was the experimental group. And then the control group, they received messages about physical activity. Okay. And so in developing the messages, they were informed by theory, everything, social cognitive theory. I had everything. But then reading the messages, I was like, these, I understand them, but will people that are like my participants understand them? And so I worked with some people in the community. I'd been working with them over time, and I said, hey, you essentially are my target population. Can you look at my messages to make sure that they would at least that they're understandable and that they would resonate in the way that I am hoping with my participants. So they have like 88 different text messages. They went through each one in an Excel sheet, and I would read it out loud, and then they would read it along with it. And I would ask them, what do you hear in this statement? Or what am I asking? They would tell me, and I'm like, okay, that really wasn't it. How can I make this better? And so they helped me retweak the question, but in a way that met my goals as a scientist, but also like help them feel comfortable and capable of answering the question in the way that it, should be communicated. And as part of this intervention, participants get link out to different videos. And so one of them, it was like a time-lapse video of making like, macaroni and cheese, a healthy version of macaroni and cheese. And so the community members helping me were like, absolutely not. And I was like, what? And they said in New Orleans, our mac and cheese, we don't use macaroni noodles, we use spaghetti noodles for our mac and cheese. So it doesn't matter if this is healthy or not, some new way, like you need to make it with spaghetti noodles. So I was like, okay, so I got my chef. I think let's redo this. Let's actually add, live, like live band music, kind of make it exciting, really feel like this New Orleans cultural kind of feel. And what I found was that video really resonated with the participants. And in that particular study, there was like a 95% retention rate. So nobody was really leaving. They were sharing the messages with others in their household. And for me, it was like, hey, it's all about being healthy. Like, I'm fine if you share this out, but like, that was exciting for me. So I can't remember where I was going with that because I didn't expect to talk about that particular project, but I think that it does show the value, and also that you may have a diverse team, but they are not the representative of the population. Like no race or ethnicity is a monolith. And then oftentimes when we think about diversity, people just want to stick to race and ethnicity, and that's a lot of what I talked about today. But there's sexual orientation, ableism, people's religion. Diversity comes in different shapes and forms, and so we have to be aware of that. And so even in our surveys that we send out, anything that we're communicating to others, like we have to be conscious of this. Now, and we have to be up to date. So that means you have to be proactive to figure out maybe like what these terms are. I did have a student years ago who was creating a survey, and in the race ethnicity section of the survey, they put for what would typically be Black or African American, they just had Negro. And it's like, and so for me as a Black woman, like one that hurt is like, wait, this is like, we are like, what? But it's just a reminder that we're not as far as we think we are in society in terms of that stuff. But then also, but I couldn't respond in like a personal kind of way. And I've realized that when it comes to race and all that kind of stuff, when I teach, like unless I want to be seen as like the angry Black woman, then I have to take a different approach. And so what I do is I just go to the data, So for this particular student, I sent her a link and was like, in 2020, President Obama removed the word Negro or whatever from the census, or it was something like that. And I said, when we come up with these categories, we're not just coming up with categories on our own. I said, you want to like ground whatever you're doing, like have some reference point. Okay, so say you got this list of race and ethnicities from the census. Okay, or something like that. And so that is like kind of like the route that I had to take. And that's what I do for most things. I try to take the emotion out of it, because then the point is lost in terms of like, you know, how to best communicate and engage with different populations. And so one of the things that I would like to do is, yes, answer your questions, but then also think about like, what are some, you know, in this scale of outreach, consult, involve, collaborate, and shared, what have been some things that have worked well for you? What have some challenges been? And, you know, how can we collectively provide any insights or like help troubleshoot the way that you engage with communities? And so I'll try to remember all these: outreach, consult, involve, collaborate, shared leadership. Okay. And so even if you're thinking of an example right now, maybe what's worked or what hasn't worked, then that would be good. So just take 30 seconds or something just to kind of look at this and see if you have an example, and then I'll stop sharing the screen and we can have a conversation. Okay. All right, I'm all yours. So let me
I have a question.
Sure.
So take the pressure off of everyone else. So, with the framework that you showed from kind of the one way to the two-way collaboration, a lot of like specifically like grants always have an outreach component to it, and that's like academic and otherwise. And looking at that framework, I am noticing that the kind of outreach expectations of grants aren't necessarily what is the word? I'm trying to be like they aren't necessarily like a reflection of going into the community and, you know, making like whatever research that you're doing actually a part of the community. Like a specific example would be, so during my master's, I worked on honeybees, and outreach components are like, well, figure something out about some bees and then go tell the beekeepers. But like beekeepers are very, like, you have to gain their trust, you know? And so it's, how do we start like with those outreach kind of expectations from like grants or whatever? How do we start to like from jump make sure that our own outreach plans are less extractive and more collaborative?
Mm-hmm. That's a wonderful question. And let me just tell you the benefit real quick of staying connected with communities and building trust and everything. So I did this study. It was like a citizen science study. And part of it was like, you know, older adults using technology to identify features of their environment that made it easy or harder for them to engage in healthy behaviors. So they took geocoded photos and recorded geocoded narratives about all those different features. We trained them in advocacy skills, and then shared the data with them. They got to figure out like, well, interpret the data and kind of prioritize the issues, thinking about what's, you know, actually feasible, important, well, really important yet feasible to address in their community. Then they presented it to policymakers and the policymaker, well, and the larger community, and they were able to identify resources that helped address those problems. So community, so in the work that I've done for one particular project, like the funding was out. Like this was like there was not a lot of funding for this particular project, but I felt like I had built a relationship with one of the affordable housing sites that I engaged with. And so I went back to them and the other housing sites to just to figure out like if any of the participants had taken any action. And so at 6 months, we saw that someone had like called the policymaker, attended some type of town hall meeting, or it was one other thing that they did. Okay, so there was some action. But then I was like, I was like, okay, let me go back at 12 months. And again, this was not part of the funding, but to me, it's like, I thought it's just checking in. I would just check in with these different housing sites, and then they would give me updates, but that's not really what I was looking for. But I found out about all these unintended consequences, good ones. So at 12 months, they were still continuing the advocacy team. They had the older adults had gone to Sacramento to the Capitol and participated in some legislative day for like older adults. They connected with the school nearby because pedestrians were getting hit by cars. And so they, did some kind of effort with the school to try to bring awareness to it and brought in the city. 24 months, they got like a new curb. They had tests done and I guess speed traps put in front of one of the housing sites. And then they also were able to reroute the city buses because they had stopped it at some point. In the older adults in one of the housing sites were no longer able to get to like a supermarket. And so they actually rerouted the bus system. But I wouldn't have known about these things if I hadn't like built a relationship with the participants in my partnering housing sites and like just checked in on them. And so when you think about dissemination, it's extremely important. There's so many things that can come from it. I do want to briefly share, because when you talk about like this dissemination plan, in one of the classes I'm teaching, it's a survey methods course. That's actually one of the activities that I always implemented, was helping them think about dissemination. So let's see. My desktop is a mess. So let me see. So in this particular assignment, they're identifying the stakeholder. So it could be an individual or network. I'll blow this up. Oops. Oh Lord. Okay. And then the different mode of communication they might use, the medium of communication, why it was selected, the type of outcome data that they hope to share, thinking about visualizations, because every type of visualization won't resonate with one group versus another. And then I have this question of how might you tailor this communication for a specific audience or stakeholder, taking into account identity, language, and culture. And so I think that as you conduct research studies, it's thinking about each of these different things. Do you just want to communicate to communicate? Are you really trying to change this, address whatever issue that your grant was about? Do you really want to make an impact? And it's if so, then, these are just some of the things that you need to think about in doing so. So I think you can go above and beyond whatever the grant requirements are, because sometimes that is just a checklist. If you give it to somebody, okay, but I think making it more meaningful and intentional is the best route. Any other questions? Or did I answer your question? Was that?
Oh no, you answered mine. I was typing on my notes.
Okay. Just want to make sure. Any questions? And if not, I can go into this, the ideas about outreach.
Okay. Because you guys know I will ask and continue talking. We do this every month.
Getting out of your comfort zone. Okay. Yeah.
So, okay, I have another question that is related. It's related to the building trust with the communities. Mm-hmm. And especially since the pandemic, so it's a lot of kind of community things have been online. Granted, that is becoming different, but have you noticed any changes in how people kind of engage in communities, especially communities that they may not be geographically close to, or how strategies for engaging have changed with kind of our more reliance on technology, and especially with communities that also may not actually have access to that technology.
Yeah, I think that yes, like people are engaging in different ways because, one thing that COVID did was I mean, as a public health person, like the disparities and inequities, like that is nothing new, but it really like kind of highlighted issues of accessibility, issues of like health literacy, and even just thinking about like, how do you get people to act? How do you get people to get tested or take the vaccine? So to address this pandemic, I think people in groups or whatever have been forced to use different types of community, different strategies that they may not have used before. And I've definitely seen a lot of like virtual efforts. Interestingly, I work with an organization called Wise Health. It's based in San Francisco sometimes. And I was brought in as a consultant on this project. This project, it was funded by the city, but the city, I think it was like maybe in the health department, I'm not sure, or the Department of Health, but they basically wanted community input on designing like interventions around HIV. And it was specific populations that they wanted to work with. And so what my friend and colleague, Brittany Doyle, who founded Wise Health, what we did was we actually had virtual design thinking workshops where we created personas informed by real people. We did interviews with different organizations serving those affected by HIV. And from all our interviews, we created personas for different types of individuals, from older adults to those who are homeless, to young people. There was one other category, but we wanted to make sure that how we created this persona was accurate, because members of the community were going to come in and go through this design thinking process to create a program or solution to help this person, I guess, access service, or this type of person access services. And so that was a real interesting just approach in general, to use design thinking to develop, like a public health program, but have the community do it. And what was nice was that the winning, like the top two groups, and these groups, again, are just like people from the community that were randomly put together in groups, they got to present their findings or their program to the city, and they were given funds. And so now what my colleague at Wise Health is thinking is like, she's like, I want to do this training for people that, like actually work in the system. Like, it's one thing to have the community. She's like, but I want to get, those working in the system to go through this process as well. And so for me, and maybe this type of stuff exists, but for me, it was a new approach to try to address, a public health issue that involved the community. And one thing that it also did was not only involve them, but they learned a new skill. Okay. So if anything, it could be looked at as kind of like capacity building, and they were paid. I think if we go to the community for things like even those that help me with my intervention, like they must have some type of payment. Okay. I think it's unethical if you don't. So yes, to your point, yeah, people are communicating and doing things in different ways post-pandemic.
And we got a question in the chat for So, how do you measure community engagement in terms of success and failure, um, and more about measurable parameters, um, so that you can learn how to improve them for future strategies?
So one, I think that's an excellent question. And oftentimes we forget about metrics, and metrics are so important. And so I think first you can think about like a process evaluation. So, as you're, planning whatever you're doing, your campaign or your program, whatever it is, one, it's involving the community, involving the community in, and even in that planning phase. But it's like, you can have some ideas like we want to create a community advisory board. We want to make sure that we have on our, on our team representation from, this many, people from this background or something. We want to make sure that we, um, uh, do something in these three communities. Whatever you plan on doing is having a process evaluation to make sure you did those things. It's like, okay, well, did you recruit 3 people for this? Did you have a community advisory board? Like how many times did you all meet? Was it just a check mark to say you had it, or did something happen? And then it's like, to what extent were you utilizing their feedback, or their ideas? So it's just checking off, like at the really probably do somewhere at the midpoint to see like, hey, are we engaging in the way that we said we would? Are we doing all these things? What were some lessons learned, or what are some emerging best practices as we, start to engage more with the community? And then if you stop in the middle, it's like course correcting, and then figuring out, okay, maybe we need to tweak things a bit, or like let's figure out what the community says about like how can we do this better or that better, and then continuing on and still looking at that process, and then with engagement, of course, like say you are with that project I mentioned earlier, it's called Black Care, the chronic kidney disease work. In order to get approved to do a billboard, I told all my different groups, I was like, in order to, if you want to buy a billboard, these are the metrics that you have to get. You have to make sure you can get these metrics from the vendor before I sign off on you being able to do a billboard in Madison, Wisconsin, or in Jackson, Mississippi, or wherever it might be. And so there are certain metrics, I can't remember them off the top of my head, but it's like, how many people are exposed to this, or drive by, whatever the metrics are, or, say that QR code, that's the metric. How many people are going, being directed to the website through the QR code or whatever it may be. Thinking about, how many people are coming to events, how often are you having events? There's so many ways to like, really measure engagement. It just really depends on what you're doing. And so it's good to, think through this. Like if you're not an expert on engagement, one, okay, get better. Okay. But two, hire somebody, get a consultant. It's like, like there are lots of things that the skills and tools that I want to learn how to do, but I'm not going to become an expert overnight. So I just hire someone to help me with that. And it's a learning process so I can understand it. But if you need help, you need help. Don't be like Homer and just go back in the bushes and act like things don't matter. So that's really important. Any questions, or you want me to expound a bit more on that?
No, I love that. I like, especially thinking about your engagement plan as a way to, number one, do what you said you're going to do, but also as a way to hold yourself accountable for engaging these communities.
Yeah, it's really important. And I think when you hear about, whatever issue you're working on from the voice and perspective of someone who like has that lived experience, it really puts things in perspective and also lets you know, like, oh yeah, I would have never thought of that.
Mm-hmm.
Like that whole thing with the macaroni noodles versus the spaghetti noodles, like what? But it made a difference, and that's not like it was a huge lift to make that switch, you know. So I think we have to be okay, and sometimes that's difficult when you're like, and I know the time is coming up, or but I know it can be difficult, especially like if you have all these degrees and you're an expert in this and that and that, but you need to we need to humble ourselves and realize that we are not an expert in everything, and that is okay. But don't ignore the situation and don't ignore the community.
Oh, and that's such a good note to end on. I don't know if you planned that, but
No,
that's really good.
it was real ad hoc.
You're
So
like perfect at 3:30 on the dot. So, thank you so much, Jylana. I really like this conversation, but I like all of them. I hope you guys had a great time, and thank you for attending this month's mentor chat. And so I hope with this, it's only a small snippet, but I hope we are, starting to get more comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because at the end of the day, like, it's worth it, right? Like, why not?
it's bigger than us.
It's bigger than us.
Bigger than us.
And our discomfort now will just make everything a lot more comfortable later. So, if not for you, for someone in the future, and like they kind of deserve it. They're not getting a lot. Again, thank you all for coming. Our March Mentor Chat, we will be talking about science consulting with our Star Trek physics consultant, Erin McDonald, so we can get some wheels turning about how our science communication skills can be applied on the big and small screen. So it's a small departure, but we're still engaging audiences. So it's a long game. It's all in the same vein. And I'll share any like links or resources that we've mentioned in our Slack channels within the week.
And then I have some resources that I'll email to you to send out as well.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, everyone. And thank you again, Jylana.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.